Welcome to the esynergy podcast, conversations that cut through the hype and get to what works. I'm Neil McIvor. I'm head of data for public sector at esynergy. And in each episode, we sit down with leaders to hear their unfiltered stories, the lessons hidden in both success and failure, and the practical steps that turn big ideas into real impact. Today, I'm joined by Ryan Preece, Deputy Chief Technology Officer at the King's Trust. We'll explore how third sector organisations can come together to make real differences for real people and dig into the real world decisions, struggles and breakthroughs that shape their journey. And this isn't just about data, technology or trends. It's about the people behind them, the choices they make and the insights that you can take into your own work. So let's dive in. Ryan, welcome. Firstly, the King's Trust. Many people may have heard of it, but what specifically is your mission?
The King's Trust exists to end youth unemployment. At the moment, we've got over 900,000 young people in the UK not in education or employment, which is the size of Birmingham. So the primary mission of the Trust is to try and reduce that number and support more young people into a career pathway rather than just a job or a skill set, but actually give them that career prospect.
That's fantastic. And obviously you'll be facing similar challenges to the rest of the third sector. What are some of those challenges that you're facing at the moment?
I think we're seeing it across the sector. We know that there's a cost of living crisis and therefore trying to gain income to allow us to do more of that incredible work is getting harder and harder. And we're seeing more of that appear throughout society. We're seeing more people in need. The need of individuals is growing. The digital gap between individuals is growing. The skill sets between people is growing. And with the introduction of things like AI being part of our day-to-day life, we're seeing people needing to do that step more to build a career.
That's really interesting. So do you see there's some opportunity in bringing the power of third sector organisations together? Can you do more collectively than you can do on your own, do you think?
Absolutely. The third sector exists, if nothing else, to create a better civil society, to move the dial and make this a more inclusive, more cohesive place for us all to live and exist. And we know that, as I said, the funding available to the third sector is reducing and will continue to reduce over the next 15 years as we see the boomer generation pass on. We understand that there will be less money available to us, but we're all trying to deliver against a mission and a cause, and they'll be slightly different, but ultimately that mission of civil society, as I say, is to create a better place for us all. That it doesn't exist by having separate systems, by having separate data sets, by trying to compete with each other. Yes, there are elements where we are competitive in how we gain funds, but ultimately we're here to work together, and it's the best thing about third sector is that we create an environment where we can work cohesively and we can provide better outcomes before kind of boosting our own egos.
But I mean, that is interesting. So what are the incentives? If I was another third sector organisation, what are the incentives to me to share my data with you? Surely you're just going to nick my funders, aren't you?
Absolutely not. So the mentality is not to take funds. The funds should be directed where the donors choose to give them, and people have a particular interest in a cause or an organisation. But we are seeing people being less affiliated to organisations and more affiliated to causes and things that have impact. So that's both from a volunteering and a funding perspective. We're seeing that reduction in kind of affiliation to one particular organisation. So we're seeing less of that anyway. The benefit to other organisations is that ability to do more and support more people. I talk a lot about the King's Trust and the young person journey. We know that a young person's journey might start with the King's Trust. They might come to us because they want help getting into employment. That's fantastic. But the chances are those hardest to reach young people who come from the hardest to reach parts of society, their journey hasn't started with us. It might have started with Crisis, with Shelter, with the Girl Guides, with the Scouts, and a number of other organisations. Wouldn't it be great? And it's not about us as an organisation. It's about providing the best service to those young people or those service users in any other organisation. And by sharing our data and by having that collective group of people coming together, actually we would likely make our organisations better places to be and we'll make our lives easier. But the thing we exist for is to make it better for that individual and for that service user. And that's where this becomes.
So it seems a bit like a no-brainer, though. So why haven't we done it before?
I think I talk about it as a no-brainer, but it's not, is it? We see data protection regulations getting stricter and tighter, and it makes it harder to do that. We've seen that organisations historically have existed in their silos, and therefore we haven't thought about data sharing. We haven't thought about coming together until the likes of open banking starting to exist. It's not something that we've fully considered. I think the other piece for me around this is we have been in a really fortunate position as organisations over the past 30 years where income's always been tight, but we've always had enough. So we haven't had to think differently because we've always managed to wash our own face with the income that we get. Whereas now we're in a perfect storm where we're trying to do more with so much less, and the pound doesn't go as far as it did 5, 10 or 15 years ago. So we're being forced to think differently, and that is a huge opportunity for us to do better.
So you talked there, one thing that I wanted to pick up on, you talked about the data protection getting tighter and stop us doing that. And its particular sort of soapbox of mine is that, in my view, data protection shouldn't stop data sharing. It should be there as an enabling function to make sure that where there is justifiable legal reasons to share data, people just do it lawfully and properly. And I'm wondering, so I often talk about the costs of, rather than the challenges to sharing data, the costs of not sharing data. And there are quite a lot of harms that can be done if we don't share data between responsible organisations. And I'm just wondering if you had an example from some of your experiences, what that might actually mean in real terms. You know, what harms could we actually be growing if we're just keeping our data silos to ourselves?
Absolutely. I used to work for the RNLI, the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, which was an incredible organisation. For anyone that doesn't know, the RNLI, they provide life-saving service in or around water in the UK, the Republic of Ireland, and internationally. The RNLI has existed for 201 years as a charity, but it's not the only lifeboat that exists out there. There's a number of independent lifeboats. We obviously have the Coast Guard in the UK, and we've got a number of other authorities and groups that get involved in life-saving service. So that might be the Royal Life-Saving Society or the police forces that are coastally based. Of
course, yeah.
Now, for many, many years, the RNLI's data wasn't shared. We didn't talk to ROSPA or the Coast Guard. We didn't share that data. So therefore, we didn't have that fullest idea of what life-saving effect needed to look like on the coast. We also weren't able to realise the impact of all the work that we did in preventative water safety as well, because we weren't measuring that. By starting to share data and talk more openly with the likes of the Coast Guard and ROSPA, what we saw was actually we were able to be more dynamic and think more thoroughly around where we position lifeguards, around what lifeboats were needed, about what type of vessels or pleasure boats or paddle boards or whatever it may be were needed to be supported in those areas. So actually it made a more efficient and effective organisation, and the RNLI have released their next 5-year strategy, and it's a big cultural shift in a move from traditional lifeboat stations with big lifeboats based on the coast, because that's how it's always been, to something that is more dynamic and more fluid, and lifeboats that are fit for purpose for the next 50 years as opposed to the past 50 years. That's the opportunity that data sharing is given.
And being part of a more integrated service as well across the piece.
It's not just about one organisation waving the flag and providing that service. I recall a great opportunity where I used to, for a time, look after the Northwest Coast, and the relationship with Blackpool Police. We know that there's a high fatality rate in Blackpool for people walking out into the water, which is really unfortunate. But it's about stopping them going into the water in the first instance, not about rescuing them once they're in. So that relationship, then, that data sharing that was built with Blackpool Fire Police, gave the ability to reduce drownings on that coastline. That's not just a social return on investment. That's not just a financial return on investment. That is a person's life, which continues to exist, which is fantastic.
I mean, that's really powerful. I mean, that continues to strengthen my argument that not sharing data is harmful. Sharing data actually saves lives in the right circumstances, and make sure your data protection functions are there as an enabling function and not a blocking function.
Yeah, and we talk about, I talk about just enough governance. It's not about over-governing. It's not about, as you say, being a blocker. we need to have governance. It's critical to what we do. But anyone who's worked in data protection, data governance, cybersecurity will always have been seen at some point in their career as a blocker. And we're absolutely not. It's just about making sure that the data is of the right quality. We can do the right things with it, and it gives us the right outcomes. If you apply those methods, you can do a lot more.
Brilliant. Making sure things are done properly, lawfully and safely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but still things are done. That's the important bit. Brilliant. You talked a little bit earlier about AI. Obviously, we can't have a podcast around data and technology without talking about AI. How much is that featuring in third sector at the moment, and what sort of prerequisites are organisations realising that they need?
In the third sector as a whole, I would say we're cautious followers. The third sector doesn't have huge budgets to be able to invest in a load of R&D when it comes to AI, and it's risk averse, so it doesn't want to burn money on projects that may not land in anything. And that being said, we are technologists, and we understand that there's the next 5 years won't pass without us either adopting technology with AI integrated into it and that becoming a part of our day-to-day working practices, or alternatively exploring how AI can impact our effectiveness and efficiency. So we are starting to use it. We use it across our shared services in the King's Trust. We've got our HR and employee relations functions really using it to be quicker and provide better support in what they do. We're starting to see some fantastic organisations explore how it improves their service model and what they do. So if I talk to the RNLI again, actually, how do you leverage AI to improve the search and rescue focus, and that could be via robotics. There is an amazing pilot going on where there are lifeguard cameras on beaches, so we're monitoring and tracking the number of people in or around that water at any one time, so we can be more dynamic with the lifeguarding service that we provide. Equally, there is a worry to it. We know that AI comes at a cost, a financial cost to an organisation, and in some ways we can't avoid that. So our caution comes from we need to make sure we've got the money to do it properly and do it correctly, and that is a budget we've not had to factor in before. So making sure that we're realistic as to what we can do that makes us efficient and effective without being outstanding.
So apart from the budgetary side of things, what are the challenges have you faced with sort of bringing AI into the third sector?
I'll talk to the King's Trust specifically. There is a worry and a rhetoric around AI replacing jobs, and ultimately we're here to end youth unemployment. And that bottom two rungs of the ladder are starting to be removed or disappear or change. So we're having to prepare people, particularly young people, so much more to move into that world of work. We know that the fastest diminishing industries at the moment are bookkeeping and the entry level legal space roles, because it's so AI driven now. Now, that's having an impact on us because we don't want to be seen to overinvest in AI whilst trying to end youth unemployment, because we haven't got a clear model on how to reduce that. The other piece is, as organisations, the third sector, as I said earlier, has always had just enough. So it hasn't had to think around its target operating model, dynamic operating model, and what that looks like for the future. I'm very, very strict on the fact that I don't want organisations that I work with or for to do AI for AI's sake. No one should be saying we're doing an AI project. Projects should exist and AI should serve as an enabler to them. But to understand that, you need to understand your process, your people, your data and your technology. And that requires an upfront investment from organisations to understand their architecture and their landscape. You wouldn't build a house without an architect's drawings to start off with, because you need to understand where you're going. And for organisations in the third sector, they need to catch up to that.
Yes.
I don't think anyone's perfect in doing it, but we need to have, again, just enough to allow us to make informed decisions.
So you think that the rise of AI, especially in the third sector, but just generally, is forcing people to look at that common data infrastructure that they've always taken for granted in the past?
Absolutely. We need to understand that total cost of ownership.
Yes.
Because AI, on the face of it, the capital expenditure investment of AI is relatively high. Whereas we don't necessarily, as third sector organisations, consider the cost of having humans and bums on seats and the efficiency of processes. To prove that AI is or isn't a benefit and whether it would be the right solution for any one thing, we need to understand where it's going to firstly have impact, that social return on investment, but secondly save the organisation money, so it can go and spend that money elsewhere to deliver the things at the coalface. That piece of work is fundamental into allowing us to take that next big step.
So would it be fair for me to say that you're cautiously embracing AI?
It's probably a good way to put it, yeah. So I would say cautious observer to cautious follower to, now cautiously embracing is probably a good journey that I've been on.
Yeah.
And I think that's sensible and rational
for us.
It
does seem really sensible, yeah. So I'm going to wrap up now with a couple of quick fire questions. You mentioned earlier the term social value. What does that term actually mean to you? Loads of people throw it about. What does it actually mean to you?
To me, to provide social value, and to any organisation that exists in the third sector, providing social value is providing a service or an opportunity for a part of society that is most in need. So be that healthcare charities, be that people with life-saving need, be that young people from the most disadvantaged, what we call IMD areas, 1 to 3 of society. It's about us providing opportunity and providing support and providing training that allows them to go on and have a contribution to society. So the social value that we provide as an organisation is to then improve the social return on investment that exists to society. We know that at the Trust, for every pound that people invest, they see a kind of £6 or £7 income investment back into society. That's fantastic. That for me is where social value exists.
So I always think of social value as making a real difference to real people who really need it. I mean, is that a fair sort of summary?
Really, yeah, straightforward way of putting it.
Yeah,
I agree.
I like doing things in threes. Thank you. Another quick fire question. What's the most unusual thing you've done in your time in the third sector?
Very good question. The most unusual thing I think I've been a part of is when I went into the third sector, I thought, obviously, everyone thinks of charities as they deliver a mission, they raise money to do so. It's probably not unusual to most people, but during my time at the RNLI is a magnificent beast of an organisation in that it designs, maintains, and builds its own lifeboats. It's got 180 shops. It's got a college, a hotel, a restaurant, and everything else in between. It's got a supply chain and warehousing outlet. Trying to think around how you create efficiency in supply chain whilst still trying to save lives at sea, and how do you draw that back? It's probably the strangest conversations I've been in as any part of my career. Who has a conversation with FedEx around how their faster delivery service is going to provide more ability to save lives at sea? It's not funny, it's not fascinating, but it's something I never thought I'd end up in my career. I thought when I first went into the third sector, do good stuff, raise some money to do that good stuff and support it with technology. Great. Actually, we underestimate the complexity of so many organisations and how they operate.
It's all wrapped into sort of integrated systems thinking, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yes.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Thanks for sharing your story and insights with us. It's been fascinating. Before we wrap up, I like to end each episode with a simple but powerful question. So in one sentence, what one piece of advice would you wish every business leader would understand sooner? And what would your call to arms be to them?
My one piece of advice, don't underestimate the value of architecture, and don't think of it as just technology, because it's absolutely not. It is the driver behind your organisation and the glue that will bring you together. My call to arms goes out to anyone in the third sector that is struggling to maintain their technology, to drive more impact and more value, is become part of that network of us who are trying to share data for good, who are trying to have that impact so that our organisations not just sustain and exist, but continue to thrive into what is going to be an exceptionally hard climate over the next 5, 10 or 15 years.
Brilliant. So again, to summarise, folks, you heard it here. Don't underestimate your architecture. I think that's fabulous and brilliant because it's taken for granted so often. Secondly, share data for good is a positive thing. Let's not try and block it. Let's enable it and let's make it happen.
100%.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in and listening to us today. Thank you, Ryan. That's been really, really insightful.
Thank you for having me, Neil.
No problem at all. I've been Neil McIvor, and this has been the eSynergy podcast.